Integumentary system, let's go through the worksheet images. These are the 2 pages provided to you for the worksheets for this chapter. Before we start, I'd like you to go through those images and identify as many features as you can on your own before proceeding through the video. On the first image, it's all about epidermis and the specific layers within the epidermis. Let's look. Okay, the epidermis, that is this portion. Let's see, on this one, it is this portion, pretty much everything above that red line. And in this one, this is the epidermis. The dermis is this area down here. This is all dermis, and this is all dermis. The dermis is made of dense irregular connective tissue. We really see the collagen, that's the pink swirly things, all within the dermis here. The dermis is stained blue in this particular slide, and you can see the collagen is likewise blue, not pink, but that is our dense irregular connective tissue. The stratum basale is this layer. I'm going to draw the bottom portion of it. And right above where I'm drawing my red line, you can see these cells are nice and thick and plump. These are the stratum basale or stratum germinativum cells. I'm going to outline it on this side as well. And we see it here as a little easier section. So these guys here are our stratum basale. Stratum lucidum, lucid means clear layer, and we really see that beautifully in this image here. So it's above the dark stripe. It's this kind of pale pink layer. We would have lucidum in this section here. It's quite thin, so we really don't have much of a lucidum layer. And you can probably, we don't really see a distinction, but I'm just going to draw a line above the dark line. That would be stratum lucidum. Stratum corneum is the outermost layer. It's going to be everything above the lucidum. So all of this is stratum corneum. We have some, and it's just that's the part that's really flaking off. Stratum spinosum is everything below that dark line. We have our spinosum right within here, and this is our spinosum within here. Notice it's above the basal, and it's below the next line, that is the stratum granulosum. That's really the easiest because it's the one that's this dark layer. It's like a black line. This one, it's not so much, but it's a dark line. It's dark condensed. That's the stratum granulosum. Where we have our live cells, well, they're going to be in the stratum basale because they're nice and plump and they're closest to the blood supply. Because the epidermis is avascular, the only hope of getting blood and nutrients is to this bottom layer. So those are our live cells. As they grow up and away from the blood supply, they will die. Keratin production, that's going on in the stratum spinosum. So in this area, our cells are still alive. They're cranking out some keratin. They're getting farther away from the blood supply. So you can see they start off being fairly plump, but then they start to get a little more smushed as they begin to fade away and die. But they are actually producing keratin at this point. It is only when it gets to the stratum granulosum that the keratin actually gels together and really creates this layer. And it's at this point that the cells are really dead. The clear layer that thickens with abrasion and calluses, that's going to be our stratum lucidum. And we see this here. I'm going to go stratum lucidum right there. Our flaky outermost layer, stratum corneum, we can really see how flaky that layer is. We can see it peeling off up here, and the corneum is up here. And I put blood vessels on here. Technically, this is little red blood cells, so there's some vessels down in here. We don't really see the blood vessels. I want you to be aware that blood vessels are in the dermis. So we're going to find our blood vessels within here if we were looking closely. This is probably one right there. That is where our blood vessels are, and that is also why our stratum basale is the only ones that are really plump and alive and born and the most healthy because they're the closest to the vessels. On this next one, we're looking at more the accessory structures within skin. So let's look at the various sudoriferous glands. These guys are really nicely shown on that slide. We also see a few right within here. They just look like these wormy, squiggly little pockets. So we see the glands all embedded down there. And this is a great picture here because we see the one duct going up to the top to the pore for the outside. Sebaceous glands are always going to be associated with a hair follicle. So we see, and sebaceous glands make oil, which is fat. So there are these white clusters. These are all sebaceous glands. This one's a really nice image here because we see the sebaceous glands with its duct that's going to go out this hair follicle. Here's our sebaceous gland. This is a beautiful zoomed in view, a transverse cut. This here's the actual hair follicle. So it's coming straight out the screen at you, but we can see how the sebaceous gland is associated with the duct that's going to put the oil into and along the hair follicle. Erector pili muscles are muscular tissue that we see within the slide. These are some erector pili muscles. This is some muscle tissue. We can see them. They're not lined up as perfectly as we would like them to be. This is some muscle tissue right here. Those are the muscles that are associated with the hair follicle. Notice the hair follicles are all at an angle. And the erector pili muscle, when it's attached, so if the hair is pointed out this way, when it contracts, then it will move the hair so that then this comes this way, and then now the hair is more directly upright. A duct, we can see ducts. These would be these little glands where the glands are coming out. So there's a single duct and then it ends in a pore at the very top. When I put merocrine type of gland, sudoriferous is its type. So we know these are all merocrines. That is our plain old watery sweat. The holocrine, that's the same as our sebaceous. So that's our oil glands that are going to be associated with hair follicles. And just for reference, the epidermis, I want you to see, I'm just going to color it in red so you can see how we're quite a bit more zoomed out than the last slide. That's all epidermis. This dark blue portion here is all epidermis. We can see epidermis along here. We really see a flaky stratum corneum in this bottom picture. And finally the dermis. All of these accessory structures are really found within the dermis. And that's pretty much it. So even though accessory structures are made of epithelial tissue, they have to be anchored down into the thicker portion of the skin or true skin, which is the dermis.